Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a popular request that has been quite a fascinating journey for me to work on, and I can't wait to tell you about it. It is the Praga Digital's 30 Years box, which is hard to see because the foil gold thing here kind of doesn't reflect. Well, you can see it this way. It's a limited edition. I have number 922. I don't know how many limits it's going to have, but that's what I got. And you can see it better using the booklet. There we go. 30 Years of Praga, a wonderful label that was founded by a guy named Pierre Barbier, who passed away in 2018. He was a bit of a loon, but he had connections. He was a critic who went into record producing, and he wrote, I think, for Diapason magazine and some other things. He had very good connections in Eastern Europe, particularly the Czech Republic. And when the Iron Curtain came down, he was able to take advantage of those to get fabulous Czech chamber players, primarily Czech artists who performed chamber works, string quartets and the like. And he also was able to get tapes of things that were buzzing around the Iron Curtain, provenance unknown. And then he started doing some other stuff. He started releasing a series called Praga Digital, some of which were digital and some of which weren't. And when the SACD trend came along, he started releasing stuff on SACD. And that's where I had a rather unfortunate encounter with him that I just want to tell you about, because I think there's a real issue with some of this stuff. And I just want to tell you what it is. Originally, what happened was Harmonia Mundi was distributing them at that time, and which is now PIAS or whatever that thing is, but it was Harmonia Mundi. I was reviewing their disc of Faya orchestral music, which consisted of the stereo Ulstermay three-cornered hat, plus other, the dance from La Vida Breve and whatnot, and the Clara Haskell Marchevich Nights in the Gardens of Spain. Now, they are marvelous, absolutely marvelous performances. And I was very curious to see what they were doing with them, because they claimed that they were, first of all, SACDs, which of course they're not. And what makes me crazy is when people release as SACDs regular stereo recordings that were not recorded using SACD technology. I don't think that that's a legitimate marketing tactic, let's put it that way, because they're not SACDs. So they put the recording on an SACD layer. What difference does it make? But even more significantly, we didn't know, or I didn't know, what the provenance of these recordings was, because Universal has them in print. They're readily available. We just saw the Marchevich box had the Clara Haskell Nights in the Gardens of Spain. It was originally on Philips. The Ulstermay three-quartered hat is legendary. It was out as one of the Decca Legends or in one of those series. So I didn't understand. And they don't give any credit to the original label. And they don't in here either, by the way. That's not in here, but there's other stuff in here. And some very famous recordings. And where did they get it from? Well, originally, on the disc I was reviewing, it said that it came from open reel tapes, which to me doesn't mean anything, because who gave them permission to use them? I don't know. And so what I said in the review was, these are marvelous performances, and they sound exactly the same as they always have, because we don't know what the provenance is. They didn't have master tapes, did they? And if so, where did they get them? And they're certainly not credited. They do give you recording dates, but they don't tell you the label, the engineers, whether they had access to the original masters, which of course they probably didn't. And so I just felt that there was a little bit of sneaky marketing, shall we say, puffery going on there. And I said that. I said, this doesn't really pass the smell test for me. Well, no sooner do I publish this review on ClassicsToday.com, and you can go read it, than Pierre Barbier hires a lawyer here in New York to threaten to sue me for some sort of slander or something, which was absolutely absurd. And I wrote back to the guy and I said, look, this is what I think, based on what I see, based on the way the product is packaged and what they say about it. And if you have other information, if you've licensed it and have permission, I'll be more than happy to say so. Just tell me. and I'll print an addition, a correction, or whatever you want. It doesn't matter to me. And it's no skin off my nose. But I said it's not right to charge full price, premium price. These were $20+ a disc for these theoretical SACDs that we have no idea what the process was to either improve the sound or release them with permission or any of those things. And so it died there, obviously. It just died there. And then Pierre Barbier died. And I have to say, I was not sorry. There is a wonderful sort of hagiography in here, an essay about what a fabulous genius he was and all of that stuff. And I mean, maybe he was. I don't know. All I know is that he did fabulous chamber music recordings and stuff using Czech artists, and I was 100% behind it, as well as some Czech radio things or performances that took place in Prague. I wasn't prepared to judge that, but when it came to simply releasing major label stuff at double the price the major labels were charging for some sort of theoretical sonic improvement, the SACD portion of which was patently untrue, I didn't know what to make of it. And I still don't. Anyway, after Barbier died, so that's the story. And after Barbier died, Praga was sold to a little, it's not little, but it's a French distributor record group called Little Tribeca. And they now own the catalog. And I wish them all the best. I think this is a beautiful box of stuff. I'm going to recommend it. I'll tell you straight up front. But I still have those questions that have never been answered. And I would be awfully interested if the people at Little Tribeca would be kind enough to get in touch and answer them for me and for you, so we know what's really going on, because there's an awful lot of what we might call historical material, and we don't know anything about the provenance of it. So some people may not care. I'm curious about things like that. Very, very curious. And in the booklet, they do list recording dates for everything and locations, but they don't tell you what label recorded it or who recorded it. And they don't tell you what the source of the material is. So anyway, let's just see what's in the box. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of have a kosher pile and a treif pile. Treif, for those of you who aren't Jewish, means not kosher. And that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. I am not suggesting that there's anything wrong. I'm suggesting that I don't have the answer to the question of how did they get access to this material and what did they do to justify calling it an SACD for which they will charge a premium price. Now, it won't make any difference in terms of this set, because this set's incredibly inexpensive. It's like $1 or $2 a CD. It's a fabulous deal. So I would not tell anyone not to get it. It's a great deal. I mean, even if it didn't have that stuff, if it had half the number of discs, it would be a great deal. So it is. Let's be clear about that. But I just have questions. And so I am going to divvy this up accordingly. So let's take out, there's 30 discs. Let's go through them one by one, and we'll see, right away. Everything with the Prague Quartet was absolutely fabulous. One of the great Czech quartets, right up there with the Pinokas and the Talich, and they're just great. Absolutely great. So we have the Janáček Quartets, one of the great recordings of the Janáček Quartets, plus the violin sonata, which makes a wonderful coupling. And the pianist is Sachiko Kayahara, and he's playing with Václav Remiš, who's the first violin in the Prague Quartet. So that's a keeper. That goes in the kosher pile. Dvorak Quartets 14 and 12, the American, with Prague. That's a keeper. Marvelous performance. You know, I wish actually that, we'll get to it later at the end. Anyway, and then we have a bunch of Shulhoff chamber works, which are fantastically fun. The 5 pieces for string quartet, the concertino for piccolo, viola, and double bass, the duo for violin and cello, and the sextet for 2 violins, 2 violas, and 2 cellos. This is with combined and other members of the Prague and Kotzian quartets, Kotzian is also a wonderful group. So there you go. Fantastic. And now we have the Kotzian Quartet doing Smetana's first quartet, From My Life, and fascinatingly, the Sibelius Voces Intime, his major string quartet in D minor. You know, Sibelius wrote a bunch of string quartets, but this is his only mature one, and it's a fascinating, mysterious, very elusive work, and it's quite wonderfully played here. And, then the Sibelius Andante Festivo, which is sort of arranged for string quartet. Lovely. Smetana. Okay, we have the piano trio in G minor. If you don't know Smetana's G minor piano trio, listen to it. Smetana was a fabulous chamber music composer. I mean, the second string quartet is wonderful too, and the G minor trio is sensational, along with the Joseph Suk piano trio in C minor and his elegy, and then Lubos Fischer piano trio with the Guarnieri trio of Prague. Very, very interesting stuff. The Fischer is from 1978. It's only 10 minutes long. Very interesting work. This is just wonderful. And now, oh, yes. Martinu, piano quintets and piano quartet. You have two piano quintets and his piano quartet. These are masterpieces, fantastic, wonderful, mature works. They were composed in the 40s. The piano quintet, the first one is 1933. The second one is in 44. The piano quartet's 42, right around the same time as the symphonies, except for the first piano quintet. And it's written in very much that style, these late works. So that if you like the symphonies, these are wonderful chamber works with the Kotzian Quartet and Ivan Klansky, piano. See, lots of kosher stuff, all this chamber music stuff. And we're already sort of like paid for the price of the box. Just never mind what the rest of it is. And then we have the Hungarian troupe, the Parkanyi Quartet, who is much less familiar than the Czech groups, but they're also a very, very good group. And you have the Debussy and the Ravel quartets and the Bartók Fourth Quartet, which is so much fun. I love the Bartók Fourth Quartet. Oh my goodness, it's wonderful. I'm not going to sing it for you, but I could. And well, yes. Anyway, that's a keeper. And the Prague Quartet is back with Shostakovich String Quartet 7 and 8 and his magnificent piano quintet. And you're not going to believe who the pianist is. It's Yevgeny Korolyov. Yes. You know, he's done all those recordings on Tatchett and also on Hensler. And he's absolutely famous for his Bach performances and whatnot. He's quite the iconoclastic pianist. And here he is doing the Shostakovich Quintet. Pretty nifty. Let's see. More Prague. Schoenberg, String Quartet number 4. Boy, that's a toughie. And Verklärte Yum, 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 with two other people playing on Verklärte Nacht. This is a sextet. This is obviously the sextet version of it. So, yeah. Enterprising repertoire selection there. It takes a little doing to get into that fourth quartet, but it's quite a piece when you do. And then the Prague again, doing Schubert's 13th and 14th, Rosamond and Death and the Maiden. I mean, this is all self-recommending. People who had these recordings, originally in their individual disc incarnations, I mean, they don't need any recommendation from me. They're just marvelous. Beethoven, String Quartet number 13 with the Grosse Fuga and the Prague, one of the great Beethoven quartet cycles. No question about it. And so you get a sample of it here. And then we have more Prague quartet people and also, oh yes, the Mozart Kegelstadt Trio and the Clarinet Quintet and the Weber Clarinet Quintet with Pascal Moragna, Frank Browley, piano, Vladimir Mendelssohn, and the Prague Quartet. So, yeah. I don't know who the lady is on the cover, but who cares? Definitely a keeper. Haydn String Quartets with Prague. These are all Opus 76. The Sunrise, Opus 76 number 5, and Opus 76 number 6. Would that they had included the rest of Opus 76. I'm getting ahead of myself again, but self-recommending, like I said, no question. Brahms, the String Quartet in C minor, and the Clarinet Quintet with Pascal Moragnes, or Moragnes, or however he pronounces his name, with the Prague Quartet. And you see these are sort of like nice covers. I don't think they're original covers. Maybe they are sort of. They've been redesigned. But It's very, very attractively done and presented. And aside from the essay that drools all over Pierre Berbier, you get, the full track listing in the booklet and the history of Praga in addition. So let's get the next pile of stuff. Mendelssohn, the E minor string quartet. Wow, baby. That's hot stuff. And the Capriccio in E minor and the string quartet in F minor. So it's like all the nice, juicy minor key Mendelssohn string quartet stuff. The F minor opus 80 and the E minor opus 44, number 2. Wonderful works with the Zemlinsky Quartet, another very, very fine group. So Berbier wasn't, only looking at Czech ensembles. I think Zemlinsky's are German, but maybe they're Czech too. I don't know. Wasn't going to look. Okay, now we're done with the chamber music, essentially, for the most part. Now, as far as the chamber music goes, we've got disc 15. That's half the set. And that's all. We're already in very good shape. So now we start to get into orchestral stuff. And this is where things get very, very interesting. Bravinsky in the Leningrad Symphony. Bartók music for strings, percussion, and celesta. Honegger's Liturgique. Stravinsky's Agon. These are very fine performances. The music for strings, percussion, and celesta has this sort of mistake in the last movement, but other than that, the string playing is amazing. The Honegger was a classic performance. All of these things were available from Melodia, one way or another. I have no idea whether or not the Melodia versions are, more official than these were, and so I don't care. There's no way to know with what was going on in Eastern Europe at the time. So it's nice to have this Bravinsky stuff. And I will say, I don't know what they've done for these sonically, but they, generally speaking, sound better than the Melodia incarnations that I heard previously. So I'm happy with it. That's a keeper too. Next, Prokofiev Symphonies 5 and 6 with Bravinsky in Leningrad. So all this stuff has been out before. Some of it was recorded in Prague. The Prokofiev 6th, for example, the 5th was from St. Petersburg. So some of it was part of that Bravinsky, and there was a Bravinsky in Prague sort of series and whatnot that he got his hands on, Berbier did. And these are from 1973 and 67, which was, the orchestra was in much better estate. By the time we get to the 70s, Bravinsky and the orchestra were on the decline. But still, there it is, if you're interested. Tchaikovsky Piano Concerto No. 1 with Bravinsky and Richter. Now, that was a Melodia release. It was recorded in St. Petersburg. And let's see, and in 1958. And you also get the Pathetic Symphony from 56 in Vienna. Now, of course, we have fabulous studio Pathetic by Bravinsky, and we have another mono Pathetic that was on Deutsche Grammophon, and plenty of Bravinsky everywhere. But it's a keeper. Shostakovich 13th with bits of, this is very interesting, this one. Now, remember, this is the Kondrashin Shostakovich 13 that was not released in the Kondrashin Shostakovich cycle. This is the one that was around the time of the premiere when there was like another performance given, and it was issued on Russian disc originally. Remember that sort of ugly purple label that was just called Russian disc, and no one knew where it came from? And we still don't. But this is that performance from 1962, and it was rather well recorded, and it's, of course, a barn burner of a performance. And you also get snippets of the Prokofiev October cantata, the cantata for the 20th anniversary of the Revolution, which is quite a hoot. And if you want to hear the whole thing, get the Chandos recording, where Rozhdestvensky screams out the voice of Lenin from the megaphone in the middle of it. It's just the noisiest piece of music in the world. And so that's exciting. And, but this is also, these are all with Kondrashin and the Moscow Symphony. But the Prokofiev was definitely on Melodia. And this thing, the Babi Yar, was on Russian disc. And beyond that, I just can't untangle these things anymore. How they got here and what they did, it beats me. But like I said, they sound as good as they do on any other Eastern European sources generally. Now here we have quite an interesting little collection. We have the Shostakovich 9th with Kozler, which is my reference recording for the Shostakovich Ninth Symphony. Thank goodness they put it in here. And some of you pointed out when I did my talk on Shostakovich Ninth that this would be there, and I'm very happy that it was. So it's fabulous, and it sounds great. It's wonderful. And you get the second piano trio with the Oysterock trio, which was recorded. Where was that recorded? Was it done in Prague? I don't know. Let's see. It seems like all this stuff was done in Prague. So it may have been a Czech original. And the string quartet number 3 with the Smetana Quartet. So these are really wonderful performances to have. And kosher. Bartók. 2 portraits, dance suite, piano concerto number 2, divertimento for strings. Okay, now things get a little spooky. This is Ferenc Fricsay and Geza Anda with the RAIS Symphony Orchestra Berlin. In other words, these are the Deutsche Grammophon performances. And what they're doing is, it says in the back here, reconstruction of the French premiere of May 25th, 1952 in Paris at the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées. But they don't tell you what is being reconstructed and what was premiered. They don't. And as far as I know, these are the Deutsche Grammophon recordings. I mean, that's all I know. It says they've been carefully remastered in 24-bit 96K kilohertz by Little Tribeca in Paris. So, maybe they have improved the sound, but what? From what? Where did they start? What was the basis? So this goes into the trafe pile. There you go. That's all I can say is that it's trafe. Bartók, Complete String Quartets Part 1 with the Vague Quartet. Now, these were, remember the Vague Quartet did them a couple times. And if these are the Part 1, these are the earlier ones that they did. Let's see when they were recorded. In 1954 in London, first UK edition on LP. They say here it was Columbia and Angel in the USA. So here they actually tell us what labels they came out on. And because it was in the 50s, it's public domain somewhere, I'm sure, this goes into the kosher pile. But they can tell us if they want to. So there they were. And maybe those are the sources they used. But I don't know, because they don't tell us. And then we have Janacek. Oh, this is really fun. This is Neumann conducts Janacek. This is a fun disc. You get From the House of the Dead, the overture, and Amaris, the cantata. Do you know Amaris? Amaris is a really great cantata. It's about this sad, amargo, bitterness. It's his name, bitterness, He's one of those, he becomes a monk, and then he sees these, lovers having a good time, and he feels terribly lonely and realizes his life is empty and meaningless. And so he prays to God to take him home, and God does, and he dies. And that's what happens. It's a wonderfully bittersweet, sort of melancholy but interesting piece in Janacek's middle period, just before Taras Bulba, from the second decade of the 20th century, the 1911s, 12s, 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there. I think, I'm pretty sure, is when he wrote it. And you should hear it. It's quite wonderful. And then we get the Cunning Little Vixen Suite in the Tallich arrangement, and the From the House of the Dead Suite in the Gilek arrangement. So this is really cool stuff. And the singers are very good. It's Vera Sukapova and Willem Pschibel, and the Prague Philharmonic Choir and the Czech Phil, and conducted by Neumann and František Gilek. And so what the heck? This is really nifty. And I'm putting this in the keeper pile because I'm assuming he used his Czech contacts to get something. Now, oh yeah. Okay, get this. Igor Marchevich, Volume 1. Well, we've already talked a lot about Igor Marchevich, haven't we? And here we get Mussorgsky's Russian songs, orchestrated by Marchevich, sung by Galina Vishnevskaya, pictures at an exhibition with the Berlin Phil, and Stravinsky's Symphony of Psalms with the Russian Symphony. All of this stuff is just recently reissued on Eloquence, very, very carefully remastered. And whence cometh this? I haveth not a clueth. So that goes in the trafe pile. Got to. And now we have, this is kind of curious, a Debussy disc. we have performances by Ernest Ulstermay and Manuel Rosenthal. Now, the Manuel Rosenthal stuff was issued in France, and let's see if it says anything about it. Because I talked about that when we talked about this music, some of these Rosenthal performances. They say nothing about who recorded it, but I have them. And what label was it? Ades or something like that? But Rosenthal was there, and we have him doing the Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun and the Image, and they're wonderful performances. And then Ulstermay doing La Boîte à Joujou, which of course is Ulstermay, and it's going to be in the big Ulstermay box that Decca will release later this year. Whence this cometh? I don't know. These are all from the late 50s, but I don't know. So that's going in my trafe pile. Then we have, this is so weird. This is Mahler, Das Knabenwunderhorn with Maureen Forrester and Heinz Rehfuss, conducted by Felix Prohaska. This was on Vanguard. This has always been on Vanguard. I don't know if Vanguard still owns it. I don't know if it's now just public domain material. It is not a great recording of Das Knabenwunderhorn. Forrester is very good. This was released basically because of Forrester. But Prohaska and the Vienna Festival Orchestra are just ugh. And so it's just rather curious. But they're not terrible. I mean, it's decent. And back in the day when you couldn't get many recordings of Das Knabenwunderhorn, this was far more competitive than it is today. But as a tribute to Maureen Forrester, whose picture graces the cover, you kind of get the point. And then you get the Rückert-Lieder with Ferenc Fricsay, the RAIS Symphony Orchestra Berlin. So this is, recorded in Berlin, RAIS. Where this comes from, this is going into the trafe pile. I am sorry. I wish it were not so. And then we have Strauss doing Till Dawn and Death, as they say. Till Eulenspiegel, Death and Transfiguration, Don Juan, with Furtwängler and the Vienna Phil. This was just re-released by EMI as part of their Furtwängler series. I don't know if EMI actually now has international copyright on this stuff, because it's old. It's getting really old. It's from 54 or thereabouts. And you've also got the Four Last Songs with Schwarzkopf and Otto Ackermann, which was her first version of the Four Last Songs, the mono version. And so, it doesn't say what's in mono and what's in stereo here. There's no indication what's mono and what's stereo, at least on this sleeve here. And these are, clearly still being used, if not owned, by EMI. And so that goes into the trafe pile as a curiosity. Now we have Beethoven, a tribute to David Oysterock, the Triple Concerto with the Oysterock Trio, the Philharmonia, and Malcolm Sargent. So that's also EMI, and possibly this stuff is now public domain. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. It's EMI, Warner. Now it's Warner. Who knows? And then we have the Violin Concerto with Oysterock and Quintets. You'll never get me to say it right. Don't get on my case about it. Cluytens. And with the Orchestre Nationale de la Radiodiffusion Française. Interesting. Very interesting. Both EMI things. This was in the Quintets box. Quintets, whatever his name is. And the Beethoven thing is in the Malcolm Sargent box, which there was one, by the way, in case you missed it. Trafe, until we know better. Now we have Beethoven piano sonatas with Richter. The Appassionata, the Tempest, and number 18 in E-flat major, opus 31, number 3. These were from, let's see, where is this? Live? It just says live. It's live, recorded in the 50s or 60s, and they're live. And it doesn't say where they were recorded. Which is kind of interesting, because there was that whole, remember, Richter in Prague, that huge big box of stuff. But I just wish that they were clear about these things. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt with Richter, because Richter, who cares? He did everything everywhere for everybody, and he didn't care, so I don't care. That's the bottom line. And finally, last but not least, we get Michelangelo. We do have recordings that actually came from Prague, with a couple exceptions. We have the Chopin Sonata number 2. So that was in the live, recorded in June 1960. And then we have the Ballade number 1. These are 1957. These were recorded in Prague. Then we have the Waltz number 17 in E-flat major, and the Fantasy in F minor. It just says live, recorded March 1957 in London. And then the Rachmaninoff Fourth Piano Concerto, which is the Warner Studio recording, which is from 1957 with, Ettore Grassis and the Philharmonia. And so that goes into the Trafe pile. It's probably half and half, but I'm conservative that way. So there you have it. All told, in the Trafe pile, the non-kosher pile, we have only 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. 7 out of 30. So I don't think that's enough to prevent anybody from getting the box. I just want people to know where it is and what it is. It's a puzzlement to me. But with that said, there is some unbelievably extraordinary music making in this box. I wish that Praga had simply restricted themselves to their chamber music recordings. They could have put in more Prajak, they did more Dvorak, they did more other things, more of all of these quartets. It would have been the most magnificent chamber music box. It really would have, because we don't need all of this stuff. We don't need the Bravinsky stuff. We don't need Furtwängler. We don't need any of this stuff that's readily available on other labels. They're selling it in the box cheaper than anybody else. When they weren't being cheaper than anybody else, they were being much more expensive than everybody else. So for box period purposes, sure, you want to get it. What the heck? It's a good, inexpensive way to get some of this stuff. But it makes no sense to me, because this label has such extraordinary proprietary material. And that's what I believe they should have focused on. That's just my feeling about it. And like I said, if the little Tribeca people want to have a chat about it, I'm here. Let's have a chat. I'll give them as much time as they need to make their case, if that's what they want to do. I'm more than happy to report what they have to say. Let's put it that way. I'm delighted to do it, and it'll give them lots of publicity, and that's all okay by me. Because, until that very end questionable time, Praga was and is a great label. And I just want little Tribeca to be aware of what they have and to treat it appropriately and keep it in print, guys. These chamber music recordings, they're never going to be huge sellers, but they're magnificent, and we'll all do our best for them. I promise you that. So keep on listening, folks. Thanks for joining me. Take care.